Not My Family is a highly fictionalized, loosely autobiographical narrative that describes generational bad will, poor choices, financial malfeasance, and even murder. The generational craziness is propagated like a tidal wave, threatening to drown everything in the deluge. Secrets are buried deep in lies, pacts sealed in blood, the truth concealed unto death, just to exert some control. I hate rubberneckers. It's kind of like, or this book is kind of like rubbernecking. The 30-mile pileup or 30-car pileup on I-75. You want to look away, but you're drawn to the carnage. Join me as the protagonist progresses along self-discovery and she recreates her identity and she discovers how to go home again. Not My Family can be purchased at FeliciaBaxter.com or directly from the author. Just navigate to Facebook, look up Dale's Angels Inc. and click Buy Now for your autographed copy. Now, let's return to the podcast.
God of glory, Lord of love, hearts unfold like flowers before thee, healthy as the sun above. Now the clouds of sin and sadness drive our dark down away. Giver of immortal hands, fill us with the light. Fill us with the light. Oh, fill us with the light of day.
Welcome to another episode of TNFro is Reading. Hi, I'm your host, Felicia Baxter. What we'll be covering today is going over any updates to the Libby's List, whether written word or movies in this case, what's capturing my attention in the news, what I'm reading, as well as my featured tweet or post of the day and my daily affirmations. And then I'll conclude with a bit of advice. GYM is number one in mind and body wellness. Shop now to discover new apparel, storage solutions, as well as hydration containers. and membership to exercise streaming services. To flex your mind and muscle, navigate to gaiam.com/TennesseeFro and check out special offers updated daily at www.dalesangelsinc.com. Now back to the show. Hello, welcome back to the show. So, where were you when you realized that you weren't woke? We use that term to signify a heightened level of awareness. And I realized it when I was listening to Black Men Who Tip podcast as I was driving from Fayetteville to Lumberton today, actually. And they were talking about two very important things. Somebody named South Park Sally, who they riffed on as an out of touch white woman in South Park of Charlotte, and also the Shea Moisture controversy. And I had no idea that they had been canceled because it seems like in our super sensitive, hyper woke community that there are a lot of people that get voted off the island and I'm completely not aware of. I was kind of with them, even though I still snuck and read page 6 on New York Post, even though they and similar rags like them are inherently exclusion riddled and not black focused. But I had no idea that I should not be using Shea Moisture. Evidently, back in 2017, let me back up. For those people that don't know, Shea Moisture is a line of cosmetics and hair products that cater to African American women, and they blew up basically within the past 5 to 7 years. Me myself, I have been a adherent since early 2000s or early to mid 2000s. After talking to another natural wearing sister on American Airline flight from Dallas, and I have used Miss Jessie's for years. However, Shea Moisture basically came out the blocks and blew up, and they expanded not only to hair products and shampoo, but skincare products, etc. Evidently, back in 2017, they had this campaign where they featured two white women and a very fair-skinned light-skinned black woman. And it was upbeat, and it was supposed to show how all races and hair textures, blah, 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 can use their products. Well, the black loyalists felt abandoned, and they basically X'd them off the planet. I get it. We all have these people that we really want to be, that need to be voted off the planet and out of the race. I mean, now O.J. Simpson has joined social media, and some of the posts that people have been talking about are absolutely crazy. Ron Goodman, one of the murdered, his sister is coming back with a post, her own podcast, how their family is still dealing with OJ 25 years later after the murder of his ex-wife and her brother. There's somebody named South Park Sally or Sarah that I had no idea who was, and Make the Stallion, who I still have to look up, which I promise to actually update on who the ham sandwich that is. But it's just amazing to me that I'm still learning 2 years after coming back from Oregon, just how out of touch I was. So I started looking up what actually happened in the 10 months that I was actually in Oregon. There was a lot that I didn't know, that I knew was kind of peripherally aware of, but I wasn't really all that engaged with because I was more focused on how am I going to get some sleep before I have to report to my night shift. But anyways, that's when the Me Too movement had ramped up. The rise and fall of Harvey Weinstein. We actually had three hurricanes, Harvey, Irma, and Maria, that ripped through Texas, Florida, and the Southeast. Beyonce posted pregnancy pictures and had her twins. Taylor Swift had a comeback. I didn't know she could come back if you never quite left. 13 Reasons Why, which was probably one of the most depressing Netflix series, but it also just reconfirmed just how badass Netflix was in producing its own media and content. The solar eclipse happened, and I remember being in the RV park at the mill and witnessing that. It was amazing. And there was that violent rally with the skinheads in Charlotte when that young woman was actually killed. And then that's when Colin Kaepernick took a knee and basically got voted out of the NFL. So there were so many things that were going on in 2017 that, and of course the typical Trump was just elected and sworn in, and all the tweets and the drama surrounding this dark period of American politics. But a lot happened in 2017 that I was kind of aware of, but I was caught up into my own nonsense that I didn't focus on. And I'm just learning just how much I missed and how happy and blessed I feel being where I am now. Now for a break from, and I want to hear from sponsors that I want, or potential sponsors. Thanks. Hello, welcome back to the show. So where were you when you realized that you weren't woke? We use that term to signify a heightened level of awareness. And I realized it when I was listening to Black Men Who Tip podcast as I was driving from Fayetteville to Lumberton today, actually. And they were talking about two very important things. Somebody named South Park Sally, who they riffed on as an out-of-touch white woman in South Park of Charlotte. And also the Shea Moisture controversy. And I had no idea that they had been canceled, because it seems like in our super sensitive, hyper woke community that there are a lot of people that get voted off the island, and I'm completely not aware of. I was kind of with them, even though I still snuck and read page 6 on New York Post, even though they and similar rags like them are inherently exclusion riddled and not black focused. But I had no idea that I should not be using Shea Moisture. Evidently, back in 2017, let me back up. For those people that don't know, Shea Moisture is a line of cosmetics and hair products that cater to African American women, and they blew up basically within the past 5 to 7 years. Me myself, I have been a adherent since early 2000s or early to mid 2000s. After talking to another natural wearing sister on American Airlines flight from Dallas, and I have used Miss Jessie's for years. However, Shea Moisture basically came out the blocks and blew up, and they expanded not only to hair products and shampoo, but skincare products, etc. Evidently, back in 2017, they had this campaign where they featured two white women and a very fair-skinned light-skinned black woman. Um, and it was upbeat, and it was supposed to show how all races and hair textures, blah, 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 can use their products. Well, the black loyalists felt abandoned, and they basically X'd them off the planet. I get it. You know, we all have these people that we really want to be, that need to be voted off the planet and out of the race. I mean, now O.J. Simpson has joined social media, and some of the posts that people have been talking about are absolutely crazy. Ron Goodman, one of the murdered, his sister is coming back with a post, her own podcast, how their family is still dealing with OJ 25 years later after the murder of his ex-wife and her brother. There's somebody named South Park Sally or Sarah that I had no idea who was, and Make the Stallion, who I still have to look up, which I promise to actually update on who the ham sandwich that is. But it's just amazing to me that I'm still learning 2 years after coming back from Oregon, just how out of touch I was. So I started looking up what actually happened in the 10 months that I was actually in Oregon. There was a lot that I didn't know, that I knew was kind of peripherally aware of, but I wasn't really all that engaged with, because I was more focused on how am I going to get some sleep before I have to report to my night shift. But anyways, that's when the Me Too movement had ramped up. The rise and fall of Harvey Weinstein. We actually had 3 hurricanes, Harvey, Irma, and Maria, that ripped through Texas, Florida, and the Southeast. Beyonce posted pregnancy pictures and had her twins. Taylor Swift had a comeback. I didn't know she could come back if you never quite left. 13 Reasons Why, which was probably one of the most depressing Netflix series, but it also just reconfirmed just how badass Netflix was in producing its own media and content. The solar eclipse happened, and I remember being in the RV park at the mill and witnessing that. It was amazing. And there was that violent rally with the skinheads in Charlotte when that young woman was actually killed. And then that's when Colin Kaepernick took a knee and basically got voted out of the NFL. So there were so many things that were going on in 2017 that, and of course the typical Trump was just elected and sworn in, and all the tweets and the drama surrounding this dark period of American politics. But a lot happened in 2017 that I was kind of aware of, but I was caught up into my own nonsense that I didn't focus on. And I'm just learning just how much I missed, and how happy and blessed I feel being where I am now. Now for a break from, and I want to hear from sponsors that I want, or potential sponsors. Thanks. Last chance for fresh Cooper River sockeye and the all-new Barkley Sound sockeye. This is the 19th summer of Fresh and Wild, and it's in full swing at Sea Bear Smokehouse. They source remarkably fresh wild salmon, halibut, and more from the niche fisheries across the Pacific Northwest. They hand fillet and ship fresh directly to you. Navigate to cbear.com/TNFro for this and other deals. Or navigate to the company website, dalesangelsinc.com, for these and updated daily deals. Now back to the podcast. So welcome back to the podcast. So I'm going to start a new section until this next election called Who Would I Invite Over to the Barbecue? As of yesterday, or maybe Friday, there are now 25 candidates in the Democratic race to the presidency. How do you actually narrow it all down? Well, integrity, number one. Do they have a plan, a viable plan? And how are they as far as race relations? Well, I think we can truly say that this is probably the most diverse group of candidates ever to run for president. President Obama gave us all hope that you don't have to be old and white to carry the presidency. But that doesn't, being black or a minority does not guarantee you a place at the table. But I keep hearing different things and I'm still kind of torn. I think ex-Vice President Biden is going to talk himself out of the nomination because he's coming off as a privileged white male. Elizabeth, what's her name? Edwards? She crazy. Bernie is too much of a socialist or too much to the left to do anything, and I think we would actually kill him. Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, yeah, they black, but the vote is still out on them. Then there's a whole bunch of people like, is it Gillibrand, that I'm not sure about. But then there's this little goofy white dude from Indiana, South Bend, Indiana, named Buttigieg. One, I like his name. Two, he's actually gay, and he's openly gay, and he's the mayor of South Bend. But I'm actually just kind of impressed with his Midwestern, down-home integrity. Over the past week, one of his policemen shot unarmed black man, and the city has basically imploded. He left the campaign trail to go back to tend to his city. And just a little bit on that altercation, the policemen are equipped with the body cam, but in this particular case, the body cam was turned off, or it was conveniently off. And I find that just appalling. But he is starting to just remind me and to support that level of integrity is what is needed after the last 4 years of craziness, lies, and just downright stupidity. But I wonder, he's done so many good things on such a small town level. How is that going to translate in the international realm? But I would invite him to the barbecue. I think he's an all-around good guy. Would love to have a conversation with him. But I do have a question mark about what he plans to do on the international level and if he can stand it. That's just my 2 cents worth. Now, from a word from a hopeful sponsor. So, welcome back to the podcast. So, I was challenged to list the things that I believe in. I am learning to believe in myself. I'm learning to believe that there is a higher power, something better than me, because life would not be worth it. I'm learning that a true belief system should always be challenged and um, edited if those beliefs don't get you anywhere. And there's nothing wrong with that. A revision of a belief system is necessary to experience life and to grow, and it's okay. And anyone that tells you anything differently is actually not only lying to themselves, but to others. I also wanted to add in my daily affirmations today. It's okay to feel sad, it's okay to struggle, and it's actually okay to stumble. But the reality is, we all are human and we're all going to go through our own struggles. And we shouldn't judge people for their struggle. But I will always strive for happiness, and I won't be apologetic or shield my happiness. I just participated in something as hippy dippy as the 2019 summer solstice. I shook an egg that was made into maraca, and I actually had some of it was actually really fun. I got to hang out with people that I actually like, and I got to connect with other people that I had never met before. And I want my life to be a reflection of that every single day. I'm striving to do those types of things, very simple things. I'm striving to create things as well as be a participant in life and not just an observer anymore. Don't have to drop a grip to do that, but if you have a grip to drop, that's okay too. And I won't be judged for it, and I'm not going to feel bad for it. Now, for a break, to talk up someone I want to be my sponsor. So back to the podcast. I think I've actually wrote and said these affirmations on last week's segment, but I think they bear repeating. You have to stop acting like an imposter. Unsubscribe from doubt. Own your accomplishments. Visualize your success. And I keep going back to that whole concept of intentional success. Don't do anything and then undo the success of completing the project. That's just craziness. And we got to break the cycle of insanity. And that's what I intend to do today and every day going forward. I love to read, obviously. Therefore, the TNFro is reading podcast. But for those hard to find titles, navigate to alibris.com. Alibris.com is chock full of hundreds of thousands of titles at a reasonable cost. So navigate to alibris.com/TNFro for those special deals. Plus, you can also navigate to dalesangelsinc.com and check out updated daily deals at your pleasure. Now back to the podcast. So, welcome back to the podcast. So, what am I reading besides my own book, and what am I writing except for my own next book? I really am not reading a whole bunch of anything. I'm still reading Nick Bolton's American Kingpin. I've watched a couple of great movies, but I haven't really added anything to my ever-growing laundry list of books that I actually want to read. And I actually am going to put on the thing to watch was last week's, or this past couple of days, the BET Awards for 2019, as well as the fourth season of Queen Sugar. Um, I think the entertainment factor for both of those was actually just amazing. I finally downloaded and will probably be listening to. Actually, I take that back. I'm going to add that I'm going to start listening to the Audible version of uh, where the crawdads sing, as well as the life code book from Dr. Phil, because I'm completely obsessed with him. Now for a word from our sponsors, or my potential sponsors. Hello, welcome back to the show. This part of the section, I actually am honored that I was able to complete my manuscript on the beginning of the year, and then it was published as of May 25th. But I have started reading portions of the book, and with plans to write a sequel to the book. It's just like, it seems like once I finish the book and got it published, there seems to be more that I would like to say on the subject of family and genetics in general. So for this section of my podcast, I would like to read Life versus Death. It starts on page 104. Most sane people will choose life all the time. My main issue with dealing with life I was dealt is I had to navigate a barrage of emotions. Anger was the most obvious emotion. I was angry at Ronald Butler for just being an abusive as he was abused. I was angry at Sarah for her mental and psychological abuse of Darlene and Myrtle. And I was angry at Sam for never questioning and loving Darlene and Francis without shame. What irked me the most was all the time lost in lies and cover-ups. When I finally discovered my Texas roots, it was towards the end of Big Sam's life. I described my grandparents as gray-haired superheroes because, against the odds and prejudice, they managed to raise amazing kids. Tony led the way. Yes, I am biased. They worked almost nonstop for years, pooled their money, and expanded the fortunes of the entire Purcell and Patterson line, and they repeated it over and over again. Big Sam was first diagnosed with stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma in 2009. And with a will of iron, he would survive highly toxic chemotherapy and go into remission in 2010. He would have a reoccurrence in 2014 and be entered into a new immunotherapy protocol, get bone marrow transplant, and go into remission again in 2015. While on one of our many fishing trips, he went back into the cabin with a raging fever. He would initially be stabilized at UT in Knoxville and then flown to MD Anderson in Texas. He developed hemophagocytic syndrome. His bone marrow transplant had started to attack his body. He raged and cried incessantly in pain, and the seizures contorted his body into the shape of a comma. The man I knew, who was bigger than life, was unrecognizable. The doctors at MD Anderson would induce a medical coma, and though we couldn't see the seizures anymore, his mind continued to rage. Grandma M. Mary and I were sitting next to his bed, and Grandma M. was reading the Bible to him. There was a sudden stillness as if someone had sucked all the air out of the room, and I felt a cool breeze on my forehead, nose, and cheeks, and then stillness. Grandma M said, "Big Sam, okay." The next 30 hours saw a kaleidoscope of medical setbacks and escalations. His cardiac monitors would go haywire when he had a long stretch of ventricular tachycardia, then ventricular fibrillation, and then nothing. He would be shocked back into a less scary rhythm, and drugs maintained his blood pressure and stopped the crazy rhythms. We would find out he had had a massive heart attack and develop a clot that made it to his brain and caused a massive stroke. His doctors told us there was no chance of survival and asked what Big Sam would want. Grandma M said, well, he wouldn't want any of this. He left a while ago. His family is here. We have to stop now. I was angry at the loss of time. I was so angry with Darlene for being so messed up that I didn't know this family for more than 45 years. And I didn't know this great man. I only got to know the broken down Ronald and his jackleg Uncle Herman for decades. I only thought men like them cheating, abusing asses were the norm. I never knew men like Big Sam or Tony existed. I knew Big Sam had many more stories to tell about his family. I loved his Uncle Sippy, but Big Sam was the real storyteller of the family. I'm used to the usual crazy, overly emotional black folk funeral of my youth, but Big Sam had a viewing in the family morgue and a classic graveside service. Big Sam was a bit of a heathen and had stepped into church since 1971, and that was at my christening. I cried for weeks after his death for myself and for the lost time. I felt so badly that my nephews and cousins would never know such a great man. I felt so bad that Grandma M would be without her road dog, but she expelled any possibility of remorse or feeling sorry because they planned for their demise by making sure their children and grandchildren would be cared for. He had encouraged her to keep her mind fresh and watch her diet. Big Sam was 88 when he passed, and he would never know that Grandma M would live to be 108, still sewing and cheating at cards to the end. Now, what I have found most astounding by the comments that are coming from the family that one of my aunts, and that's the other thing, I am not related to the Purcells. I am related to the people I have said that I've been related to and share that last name. So there. Who I am and feel bad that I'm not related to are these people that I have conjured in my mind, and I would have wished that my family could have been as larger than life than the gentleman that I just described and his brothers and my make-believe father or my play father that I describe in my book. And one of my aunts was just so concerned that she was saying, and did I really think that I was a part of a different family, and had I been bamboozled or tricked into thinking that I was related to a whole group of people? Well, that made it seem, or that was actually when my aunt busted out laughing and said she obviously didn't know me, that I wouldn't be tricked into thinking that I was related to anybody else except for who I was related to. But that also spoke to the potential of my storytelling skills that I had convinced a person that doesn't usually read of the possible believability of this completely fictional story. Now, granted, a lot of this is based on events, loosely based on events that have transpired in my life, but are fiction. And that's it. Straight up fiction. But I do feel proud that I could actually trick her into believe that I am possibly not related to any of them. I find it completely hilarious. But anyways, so in the second part of my book, not only do I plan to expand upon the fictional Darlene Sampson's heritage, but also to expand the description of the Purcell family and my interactions with them. And I want the readers to be prepared or to know that I plan on expanding upon who this character Uncle Sippy is. And I had made mention of Tony Purcell, and he also had brothers, and they had children. And so this is just an excerpt of what I've already started working on. And it's on the chapter, How to Recoup 42 Years. Big Sam and Grandma M were superheroes within their own right, strong-willed and hardworking, and they had a family. And they and their family decided to stay in Texas at the worst of the Jim Crow era. He and his brothers and several cousins served in World War II. And I know I wrote this right during the time of celebration of the 75th anniversary of D-Day, because that's where I got this next part from. Stormed Normandy, wounded, patched up, and then sent back to the front. Liberated one of the last of the German concentration camps, Belsen. Uncle Ninny, which was another uncle, or Big Sam's brother, took part in the liberation of Paris. Uncle Bull Baby jumped into Britain. Several cousins fought in the Pacific Theater. And I compared this, and I'm see how I'm going to work this into when your male role models are completely screwed up growing up. You learn to look outward for positive role models. First in the Baptist church, then during graduate school. My father and grandfather were the first true strong-willed men I had ever met. They would storm Normandy, and then after the war was over, they went and volunteered to fight in Korea. This would be the only time they would leave Texas. For a time, they would relocate to California and then to Japan. There are pictures of Grandmom, Gramps in kabuki wear and Grand M in full geisha wear in Tokyo and Kyoto. And during and after the war. And through USO work, they would move to Hong Kong. She watched and took notes in hundreds of moleskin notebooks. Learn to cook noodles from the best of Oriental cooks, and learn flower arrangements and gardening techniques. And one of her sisters, Aunt Bet, would then also be taught doll making, because Aunt Bet would marry Uncle Ninny. And that would be the subject intermarriage, I think would be the subject of the next chapter. And that leaves me at a great point or stopping point in my reading for this week. And just the enjoyment it is to create a tale that would actually entertain, but I hope in some way that it would encourage people to know who they are and where they come from, and then always be encouraged to grow further than the people before you. Now for a word from our potential sponsors. Well, that concludes another episode of TNFro is Reading. And I want to leave you with the final two quotes of the day. And it comes from very disparate sources. But the first one comes from one of the Anthonys from the CBS Morning Show with Gail. And he said, in response to the nonsense that's going on in Oregon, and this just makes me just so happy that I left that god-awful place. They do not want to vote on a climate change bill. Why would you think that politicians that are in a rainforest would not want to vote on something that would protect their natural resources, and one of the main reasons which would keep people coming to that state? So a lot of, and all these Republican senators, state senators, are just not coming to work. And they're going to have to do something because it has to be voted on by law. They're actually sending out the Pinkertons to look for these fools, and it just pisses me off. But anyways, one of the Anthonys basically said this: democracy can't work if you run out of the room every time it gets hard. And nothing truer was ever said. He hit that right dead on the head. And then the other statement comes from one of my favorite doctors in the world, Dr. Phil. I'm kind of obsessed with him. And he calls himself a bald-headed sumbitch from Texas. And that's true too. But he asked one of his guests, do you think you had an affair? And she says, I don't think so. And then he says, if you drop the linens and start grinning, that's an affair. I die laughing because that's just funny. And so I'm going to leave you with that as two of my funniest quotes of the day, and just spot on. So truly that's it for this week. Join me next week when I report on some self-interest from a very cranky middle-aged black woman. But don't hesitate to listen to the previous episodes on Podbean, iTunes, and yes, bitches, even on Spotify. There's just so much to read and so much to see. And I'm going to try to see as much of it as I possibly can. And as always, be present, be kind, but just don't be stupid. Thanks, you guys.